Hello and welcome to lesson 10. In this lesson, I will give you my theory about depression and in specifically how severe anxiety becomes depression. The psychiatric profession come up with a chemical imbalances theory for depression. It is not based on evidence. It's not that they have evidence and then they develop their theory. They have plucked this theory out of thin air. They consider that depression is due to chemical imbalances in the brain. Now, they have modified their theory since 2000, but they're still talking about chemical imbalance. They have seen that in some cases in depression, neuroplasticity is involved, and they are claiming that this is part of the chemical imbalances that causes the depression. But they are missing the boat because the emotion of sadness involves neuroplasticity. It is not simply that sadness in depression involves neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity involves adaptive processes in the way that neurons talk to one another, connect. I will explain that in the next lesson on depression where sadness is involved. Now, the most of depression, the bigger percentage of depression arises with severe anxiety, and a lesser amount arises where a person has sadness or grief, and a very tiny percent arises where the person goes into the freeze response of the fight or flight response. This is very rare and is seen mainly in facilities like mental health institutions and old age homes and others. And I strongly believe that this is most likely due to abuse of the inmates by some of the staff. So the inmate feels completely out of control, and the only thing they can do is to go into a freeze response, which ends up, of course, at a form of depression. I won't discuss that any further. I will concentrate on the two major forms involving severe anxiety, which I will talk about in this video, and sadness and grief, which I will talk about in the next video. First, we need to ask, what is depression? When we look at depression, we see two big factors that involve the heart. One is low metabolism. High resting and low metabolism all involve heart function. The other is low heart rate variability. Normally, our heart rate is variable. There is variation between any two adjacent beats. Our reactions in life at any moment affect our physiology, and this is seen in the variability in the heart rate. So this is not about happy chemicals in the brain. This is about the heart and low heart rate variability. The one defining characteristic of depression is anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. The other characteristic of depression is low energy. So what we need to explain is anhedonia, inability to feel pleasure, and the lack of energy to do work. And we can explain those in relation to the heart. So the first thing that we need to appreciate is that anxiety is not an emotion, but two emotions. They are not coincident, and they do both involve heart function. Now, in normal anxiety, the person may be apprehensive, fearful, but they are not running a fight or flight response. So the changes between their apprehension, fearfulness, and their need to worry are not going to create a significant problem for the heart. However, in pathological anxiety, there is a fight or flight response because there is a concealed threat. The person is being hassled, adversely influenced by others around them. So the heart is going to be going from full on fear response down to resting metabolism in order to worry. They can't worry while fearful because in the fear response, the cognitive function in the brain, which we require for thinking and reasoning, is declined. So they need to go back to resting metabolism in order to think and reason, to worry and try and find a solution. Once they start to worry, they will become aware of the danger again, and so they'll be back to fear, and then the need to worry again, the need to find a solution, so back to resting metabolism again, and it'll be back and forward, if the anxiety is severe enough. So there will be an enormous demand on the heart. This demand on the heart is what affects its ability to react spontaneously and therefore to show heart rate variability. This is also what causes the depression because the heart has become ineffective as a pump and it cannot sustain the metabolism at a high enough rate, even for resting metabolism. So the metabolism ends up low, which is what depression is about. So, how to arrest the problem? The one key element is to appreciate that there is a threat posed and that you intuitively perceive it and instinctively react to it. Your reaction, the fight or flight response, is due to a real threat. And in most cases, it is not associated with the problem that is presented, the idea. In some cases, it is done to make you feel vulnerable, so to become anxious. If you are in a position where you can be vulnerable, then you need to address that and take away the possibility of harm. It is true that they do not intend to carry out the threat, but there's still the possibility that's going to affect you, and you need to overcome that anxiety because that is what is having an effect on the heart in order for there to be depression. So you have to address any vulnerability. I have given the solutions for severe anxiety and anxiety in general in the previous lesson. Now, one of the things you can do is to make an affirmation that while you feel fear, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to be fighting and you're not going to be fleeing. This gives instruction to your body not to fire up to the very high level. It is hard not to have some reaction of fear because there is a real threat, but the degree of that reaction can be far lower with an affirmation. And you can use a similar affirmation for anger.